I've had a lot of requests to do a video on the topic of peptides in skincare, and it was in researching this topic that I realized something. Peptides are terribly misunderstood. So break out your eyeliner, put on some My Chemical Romance, prep those MySpace profile pictures, because today we're talking about Mom, you just don't understand peptides. As always, timestamps and links are in the description box below, but to open up this video, I want to do something kind of out of character. I really do want to start this video with my conclusion. Yes, it's a bit you're looking at, but for a reason. I really do think that peptides are misunderstood. What I've noticed is that a lot of people seem to just kind of group all peptides together and view them as almost one entity, while the reality is there are so many different kinds of peptides that are grouped into 4 different categories based on what they do, and yet it's also not necessarily wrong to just categorize peptides as merely humectants. Because as you know, in this series of going over skincare ingredients, what I like to do is look at the science, look at products that are incorporating the science. And when it comes to the topic of peptides, there is something that is severely lacking, and that is randomized controlled trials, published, peer-reviewed literature. Peptides involve a whole lot of faith in manufacturer data. That is not to say that peptides don't have incredible properties to them. Who knows, 100 years from now, we may be saying peptides are the best skincare ingredients out there. It's a distinct possibility, but right now, here in 2023, it's a little hard to say that. And this is exactly why I want to start this video with the conclusion, because while I personally do like peptides, I certainly do also have other, very studied products in my skincare routine, very studied ingredients, my retinoids, my sunscreen, and I think that would be a much better place to start with skincare than peptides. So in an attempt to start a conversation on peptides, most likely meaning this is peptides part 1, I decided the best place to start is actually to throw it back old school and to talk about The Ordinary's peptides. Listen, I'm sure there are plenty of other YouTube videos already talking about The Ordinary's peptides, what the differences are between them, but the reason I've chosen to start with this is because, quite frankly, The Ordinary actually did this pretty well. They're a brand who keeps it simple, and with a topic that is as confusing as peptides, let's try to make it as simple as possible, at least to start. And where does that bring you? Back to me. Let's start out this video with the Matrixyl 10% plus hyaluronic acid. For as much as I love The Ordinary, I do think their products have very indirectly contributed to some of the confusion around peptides. This product says Matrixyl 10%, and so a lot of people do believe that means there are 10% peptides within this product. So let's start out by explaining what Matrixyl is. Matrixyl is a patented name for a blend of ingredients. There's actually quite a few different forms of Matrixyl at this point. I'll go ahead and put up the Matrixyl 3000 formula for you to see. So you can see that within these Matrixyl complexes, yes, it's a complex, you have other ingredients that are taking up most of that 10% within this product. When I actually show you the use level within Matrixyl itself, you might be kind of surprised. But I think it's important to start here because when we eventually move on to, say, Korean products that contain peptides, I've seen a lot of criticism about low percentages of peptides, when in reality, even Matrixyl 10% from The Ordinary contains a low percent of the actual peptides themselves. As far as what The Ordinary says about their Matrixyl serum, they say it offers an advanced formula that targets fine lines and wrinkles by promoting firmer, plumper skin. And they say that because this is a product that is using signaling peptides. When we get into the ingredients list itself, you actually see 3 different types of peptides, all of which are signaling peptides, all of which are owned by Sederma and under the name Matrixyl. And when we do look at each of those individually, we see that they are all a little different, but the idea of combining all 3 of them plus the hyaluronic acid is for a synergistic effect that, as The Ordinary says, comes together to target wrinkles in the skin. So first up, we have palmitoyl tripeptide 1. Now, one of the most confusing parts of peptides is that a lot of times these peptides have plenty of different names. I'm going to put them up on the screen to the best of my ability, but just so you know, if you do go digging for more primary research on these, you might want to look up palmitoyl oligopeptide instead, pal-GHK instead. This is a very popular peptide. It has quite an interesting story and idea behind it. Basically, it's composed of part of type 1 collagen. Now, the idea of putting this topically on your skin is that you're kind of just putting these pieces of collagen around. The idea is your skin sees these pieces of collagen and it says, whoa, what happened here? Why do we have broken collagen? I think we're gonna have to make more collagen. And intuitively, that sounds like a great idea, but it is always important to test great ideas to make sure they actually work. Now, we do have some good manufacturers' data on this, showing an improvement in fine lines and wrinkles, in overall skin tone. However, we still don't have a lot of published literature. Research is slow, it's expensive, it takes a long time. So again, these are ingredients where I really do think we'll eventually see research, but right now we have manufacturers' data to rely upon. Let's move on to palmitoyl tripeptide 3, which is the other peptide present in Matrixyl 3000. This too is a signaling peptide, but it works in a very different way. This one has an anti-inflammatory mechanism, which I feel might sound not that interesting in the context of improving wrinkles, but it is really important to reduce inflammation. It is the cause of so many problems in our skin that it really is smart of Sederma to combine this with their palmitoyl tripeptide 1, so you have a more effective peptide blend in the end. Moving on to palmitoyl tripeptide 38, which in theory is even more advanced. This one is known as Matrixyl Synth 6. This one claims to benefit the skin in 6 different ways. This too is a signaling peptide, and per Sederma, the manufacturer, this really showed promise in terms of specifically crow's feet as well as forehead wrinkles. So the idea for The Ordinary to combine all 3 of these peptides into Matrixyl is so that in the end you have a formula that improves all kinds of different skin parameters within your own skin naturally, signaling the production of more collagen, signaling the reduction of inflammation. So it all comes together to make an easy-to-use serum that you can use all over your face, all over your neck, in hopes of restoring some of these things that we lose from our skin as we age. And overall, it is good in theory. The reality for me is that I just don't use this as much anymore because I do have other peptide products that I personally prefer, but I still respect it for what it is, a signaling peptide blend. Let's move on to a lot of people's favorite, the Argireline solution, 10%. Now again, just like with Matrixyl, this is not referring to 10% peptide. Instead, we are again talking about a patented blend, this time using acetyl hexapeptide 8. This one is pretty popular because it is often referred to as a Botox alternative. Are you kidding me? A Botox alternative for under $10? And this one actually has an even more simple ingredients list, the shortest out of all of the peptide formulas. It only includes 1 single peptide, again, acetyl hexapeptide 8. But let's talk a little more about that peptide. You see, we've moved into a completely different category of peptides, the neurotransmitter inhibiting peptides. And that is exactly why these products that use this peptide claim to be Botox alternatives. I recognize that what's up on the screen may seem like gibberish, but if you can understand My Chemical Romance, you can understand this too. This peptide is actually part of a docking protein known as SNAP25. SNAP25 docks on the snare, which is the SNAP receptor. Scientists love doing stuff like that. If you do get Botox, SNAP25 Ain't there no more. I think you could take the person out of Louisiana, but you can never take the Louisiana out of the person. Whereas what acetohexapeptide 8 does is it looks like SNAP 25. So in theory, when you apply it, it competes with SNAP 25. And it's through that concept that you hypothetically shouldn't be able to make the same, we'll say, level of facial expressions as you could without it. There are a few problems here though. One is brands can't really explain all of this to you in selling products because this is a little bit of an iffy territory. But you see, the biggest problem here is that, as I said, this takes place deep within your skin. And one of the problems with peptides is what happens if they don't actually make it within the skin? Well, nothing, aside from maybe a humectant effect. This is why a lot of brands combine peptides with ingredients called penetration enhancers, which, and I cannot stress this enough, would make a really good band name. The idea behind penetration enhancers being that hopefully these peptides actually do get to their target destination. This is also why it may be a good idea to do things like the so-called skin flooding, to use products before peptides that help to increase their absorption. Honestly, I've been over here getting a whole lot more experimental with the Medicube devices that claim to increase penetration of products, but the reality is we cannot say with confidence that these are working in the same way as something like Botox. Because when it comes to the difference between a topical Argireline and Botox, well, I needle to tell you about a difference. Oh, that was a dad joke. But one interesting thing about Argireline, and perhaps because it is such a popular ingredient, we actually are starting to see some of those randomized controlled trials come out. There is a study that involved 60 Chinese participants that did see promise with this ingredient. We've also seen studies on absorption of this ingredient, which seems to suggest that it's quite possible this might absorb better into people that have a more thin skin versus thicker skin, which really comes down to meaning this might work better if you are a bit older versus if you are younger. But again, coming back around to the reality of Argireline and the neurotransmitter inhibitor peptides as a whole, we are putting a lot of faith in those. It's okay if you want to, it's great if you see results, but we are putting faith in these. And one thing that's really funny to me, especially about The Ordinary's Argireline, which is such a targeted treatment, it's funny to me when I see people apply that anywhere that isn't their forehead or around their eye area. There's really no reason I can think of to apply this to, say, your cheeks, again, unless you're really just going for humectants. And at that point, why not just go with glycerin? Now that brings us to actually my personal favorite and a lot of why I'm sitting down to make this video today, The Ordinary's Multi-Peptide and Hyaluronic Acid Serum, which I recently repurchased with the new name. I realized I really like this serum and don't want to be without it. So what this is a combination of everything we've talked about so far and more. It still includes acetohexapeptide 8, but this time in something called Argirelox. Also owned by Lipotec, and this time it uses that ingredient in combination with pentapeptide 18. So let's start this peptides conversation with what is pentapeptide 18. This is another neurotransmitter inhibiting peptide. I really couldn't find a ton of information about this, but what I did find is that it seems the manufacturer is suggesting that this, in combination with acetohexapeptide 8, works better synergistically. 2 is better than 1. But they propose that this is a good choice to use alongside Botox, which I really find interesting because, again, so many people are using at least Argireline as a substitute for Botox, and here's the manufacturer saying, yeah, use that plus this other peptide with Botox. This also includes one of my personal favorite peptides to say, dipeptide, diamino, butyroyal, benzolamide diacetate, also known as SNAKE. This is a synthetic peptide modeled after Waglerin-1 found in snake venom, which kind of goes without saying what they're going for there. Another product that is intended to help with freezing up the face. You know why, right? The premise being if you move your face less, you form less dynamic lines, which hypothetically stays less on your skin. It's a topic for another day, but there are people who believe in the opposite, in that you don't actually want atrophy in your skin because that would be bad for your skin. A topic for another day. We also have a bit of acetyl, arginal, tryptophenyl, diphenyl glycine, also known as relistase. And we're back to signaling peptides with this. This one is meant to inhibit elastase because remember, we aren't just targeting making more collagen, more elastin in our skin. We also want to prevent the natural breakdown from that, which happens via an enzymatic process. Again, as I've mentioned, I really do like this serum, but I want to call a spade a spade. There are things I don't like about it. It is kind of goopy in the way that it feels on your skin. It's not, it's not as cosmetically elegant as some of the much more expensive peptide products out there. So I reserve this only for nighttime use. I think this product hates makeup. But I don't care if I'm going to bed with little pilling bits on my face as long as I'm getting results. And for me personally, this is the peptide serum from The Ordinary that I have stuck with. It's only fair to also include The Ordinary's multi-peptide serum with copper peptides, or do they still call that buffet? I think they still call it buffet. Y'all gotta rename that one too. This one has basically the same formula as the multi-peptide serum, but with the addition of copper tripeptide 1, which in all fairness really is one of the more well-researched peptides. Some of you are familiar with the work of Dr. Picard, who absolutely loves this ingredient. We do see evidence for it being a great ingredient, not just for boosting those collagen, elastin, etc. in our skin, but also for wound healing properties. But there are a few catches, one being that this is a much more expensive ingredient, and so The Ordinary's copper peptide serum is actually pretty expensive. I did personally go through a full bottle of this, and I decided against repurchasing it because, quite frankly, even though the research is there, I didn't actually see as much in terms of results. I see more from something like Stradia's Liquid Gold, a product I'm a broken record about. And copper peptides can also be kind of tricky. You do see some anecdotal reports of people having really bad experiences with them, so much so that there's a thing called copper peptide uglies. My suspicion is it's probably important to make sure that you are not combining copper peptides with any ingredients that could cause the peptide itself to break so that you end up with free copper in your skin. That seems that it could be pretty bad to me, and it does make it a very confusing ingredient to work with in a skincare routine. To this day, I still do occasionally use copper peptides, but all as a routine on its own. I'll talk about the Perricone brand in time, but at the same time, I will tell you honestly, I don't think you necessarily need to go the copper peptide route for repair. I really do think there are other ingredients. But again, that's just me, and as always, if you completely disagree with me, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. Now, because it's 2023, we actually have a fifth facial peptide product from The Ordinary, and that is the Multi-Peptide Eye Serum. Before we get into this, really quickly I have to say, this too does not feel like The Ordinary product to me. Y'all realize this one is actually $50 for a fluid ounce. We buy it in the half-ounce size, so it's only $25, but just to think that there is a product from The Ordinary that is $50 for a fluid ounce, huh. Just like The Ordinary's multi-peptide serum, this is not a formula that is just relying on peptides. We certainly see other things going on here. We see some of the peptides we've already talked about, palmitoyl tripeptide 38 from Matrixyl Synth 6. We have the Snake peptide again in here, and we have a couple of actually really good peptide ingredients, at least in my opinion. Acetyl tetrapeptide 5 is part of Iceryl, and it is a signaling peptide that is designed for, as you may have guessed from the name of it, the eye area. And specifically what this one does is it helps with reducing water accumulation under the eye area, which indeed could be one of the reasons people deal with eye bags. It could also be something else. But nonetheless, some people may see results from this. It also has claims to help with dark circles. In terms of the manufacturer's data, it's a little lacking, a very small sample size. However, really good results. I believe 95% of the participants saw an improvement with this. And then we have Matrixyl nonapeptide 3, also known as retinopeptide 189. Now, this one was designed to mimic retinoic acid. To do this, the manufacturers looked at gene expression between retinoic acid as well as peptide options, and they found this one that activates similar genes, which is a whole situation that is really reminiscent of bakuchiol for me. They haven't done a lot of research with this one. They've done some tissue studies showing that it may help with increasing turnover in the skin in the same way as retinoic acid does. Really not super convincing at this point. However, the more I think about it, the more I actually do really like this being in specifically an eye product, because it does seem that there are a fair number of eye doctors who are a bit concerned about retinoids around the eye area. And that's the kind of thing where I don't want to talk too much about this either in a peptides video, but it is the kind of thing where I do sometimes find myself just feeling a little bit uncomfortable with how comfortable we all are with retinoids around our eye area. Again, totally a topic for another day. This is all to tell you, the more I use this product, the more I actually do like it. I wasn't initially super wowed by this. I don't like how runny it is. It's a little hard to control around the eye area. Again, don't apply it like I'm doing in the video, just for reference so you can see how drippy of a product it is. However, I like it. What I can say is I've tried other eye serums that I've seen results from a lot more quickly. However, this is one of those where the more I stick with it, the more I'm going, actually this is giving me the same results as the $80 eye serums. It took time to show those, which I think that might actually just describe peptides as a whole. Now that brings us to the end of talking about, again, The Ordinary's facial products, but again, peptides is such a vast topic that you do see products that are designed for hair growth, for lash growth, as well as a whole lot of other peptides, including brightening peptides, peptides to restore skin health, so many more options out there. But hopefully this was a decent intro to peptides, at least in terms of understanding just how little of them actually appears in products, in terms of recognizing that there are a lot of peptide options out there, and most importantly, that we are still lacking in further research. But that's it for today's video. As always, again, I encourage you to leave your thoughts, your experiences in the comment section below. If you found today's video helpful, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Help a little emo out. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you all next time.